This is draft season presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. John Schmeelk, Tony Pauline with you, another episode of draft season. My voice isn't back all the way yet between all the live shows that I did out there on Big Blue Kickoff Live, Giants Huddle, and then out at night trying to figure out what's going on. I'm still feeling it. I'm not gonna lie, Tony. I fell asleep in the middle of watching workouts on Saturday night at the end of the second wide receiver
Wow.
group. I did not completely catch up yesterday, but I got most everything in. I know it was a busy week for you as well. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you. No, it was insane. I mean, those were long, grueling days. I never thought that sitting on my rear end for 8 hours would be so tiring. But Thursday, I was in the workouts at 3:30. I stayed till 8 o'clock at night, and the linebackers were still going on. Friday, I was in the workout at 3:30. I had a dinner date. I left at 7:15. The tight ends were just beginning. Saturday was nuts. I got there at 3:30. No, I'm sorry. I got there at I got there at 12:30 because it started at 1. Got there at 12:30. I left at 8 o'clock. I was there for 7.5 hours, and the second group of the receivers were still going on. Sunday was the best day. Got there at 1 o'clock. They were done by 4:10. It was a short, crisp workout, but we'll talk about it more. They got to do something condensing these workouts. This was my 25th combine. My first combine when I was there in 2001, they started the workouts at 9 o'clock in the morning. They were usually done by 12 to 1 o'clock, and it was bing, bing, bing. The way it was with the offensive linemen, just too many breaks, too much extension, primarily for TV, and some of the teams are not very happy about it.
All right. So before we get to the workouts themselves, Tony, this would be kind of our combine review show, by the way. Big surprise. What are some of the things that you heard during the week about what teams are thinking specifically towards the top of the draft or just about players in general?
Obviously, the Titans want to trade down. There are reports out there that both New York teams would like to trade up to get Cam Ward. The Titans do like Cam Ward. I still feel, and I've heard that if they don't get the package that they want, there's a very, very good chance they could take Cam Ward. As I said, going back to the Shrine Bowl, Cam Ward has assured himself to be the first quarterback selected. I do think there's a chance the Titans could take him. Obviously, there's an opportunity, or there's going to be the opportunity for teams to trade up to get him. Conversely, as I reported yesterday on sportskeeda.com, Shedeur Sanders is falling. He's, a lot of people think the earliest he's going to go right now is number 6. The film is not good from 2024, as a lot of people, when they look back on it. There is the concern about, his dad injecting himself, in media conferences in Colorado. There's also the fact that, he's not helped himself since the Shrine Bowl. And we were both there. This whole thing, Shedeur Sanders is going to be at the Shrine Bowl. There's going to be a lot of excitement. People expect him to participate in individual passing drills. He showed up, one day in sweats, and then he's there just hanging out. He's not done himself any favors so far in the pre-draft process. There will be some other prospects that we will talk about when we go through the review that, have really helped themselves. Obviously, we're going to have to talk about Will Campbell with the short arms, see where he fits in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Tony, I think the way I kind of look at it, the top 3 picks in this draft, to me, this is what my big takeaway from the combine. When we get to pick 4 in the draft at the end of April, the 3 players that are going to be off the board are going to be Cam Ward, it's going to be Travis Hunter, and it's going to be Abdul Carter.
Right.
I feel as sure about that as I possibly can. And that includes the fact that Abdul Carter, they found a stress reaction in his foot, and he might not even, they say he's going to be ready for his pro day. I'll believe that when I see it. But that to me is one of the things I walked away feeling pretty good about. Those will be the top 3 picks in the draft.
I've thought that all along. And, like you say, we don't know the order as of yet. Number 4, could it be Mason Graham? I don't know. Could it be Ted McMillan, who psychologically tested off the charts? Not the fastest guy in the world, but a big, dominant, game-controlling receiver that the Patriots would like. Could it be Will Campbell? Some people were saying that at the combine. I still don't see that because he's not as good as some of those other players, although they need a left tackle. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's not a lot of top end talent in this draft, and that's something else I wrote at Sportskeeda. There's not that generational player at the top, and teams have been lamenting that. In fact, somebody said that if Jeremiah Smith was eligible for this draft, hands down he'd be Jeremiah Smith, the freshman receiver from Ohio State. Hands down he'd be the first player selected. But what that leads to is, a lot of questions, a lot of potential surprises. We usually get them in the back end of round one. We're probably going to see a lot of that in the top 10 after those first three players.
Yeah, I'm with you. One team might have a team as their eighth best player. Another team might have that same player in the 20s or the 30s. Like, it's going to be crazy. All right, before we get position by position, Tony, I was a little disappointed that so many of the best players at individual positions did not work at this combine. You've been doing this longer than me. This was 2011 was my first combine, or was it 2012? 2012. So I've done a lot of these. You've done probably almost twice as many as I have. I feel like more than ever this year, the top guys at these positions just did not work, and they didn't run, they didn't test. And to me, that was disappointing, where the top tight ends, the top defensive tackles, the top corners, go down the list, almost every position, the top wide receiver, these guys just did not go out there and test. And that to me was a little bit disappointing. Running back too.
Blame the schedule. Go back to what I said. I spoke with Landon Jackson, who had a superior workout.
He was great.
Right after I saw him, I went up, I introduced myself. We have a common friend. We talked. Landon Jackson told me that they got him up at 7 o'clock in the morning. He didn't run until 5 at night. So basically, except for maybe a little stretch, he did nothing all day. He sat around all day waiting to work out. You can't do that and expect people to, be willing to perform at peak performance, because they have schedules. And, the schedule does not include hanging around for 7-8 hours doing nothing and then getting out there and performing. Even if, players that, Monday Night Football who play at 8 o'clock, they have a schedule. And the training schedule, when they get ready for the combine, is not, let's get you up, let's wait you around for 8 hours, and then we'll do the workout. The other thing was there was a problem with the field, as I reported. You saw really from the first day when the defensive linemen took the field, guys were slipping left and right. Cameron Horsley, the defensive tackle from Boston College, could not stay on his feet. I mean, Will Campbell yesterday took a bad spill, looked like he hurt himself. Fortunately, he didn't. And what I learned was after the 2024 season, they put a new turf on Lucas Oil Stadium. And that defensive line group that went off on Thursday was the first group of players that were actually on that field. So I think the fact that players were waiting around for hours before they got on the field condition itself, a lot of that, led to, players not testing, not performing. Obviously, I don't think any of the Ohio State players ran. You can check me. I may be wrong, but it was, and I had reported that, and that's because the lateness of the college season, the fact that the college season stretched to the end of January. For some teams, the middle of January, who didn't make the title game, except for Ohio State and Notre Dame. I think that also precluded some of the players from actually working out.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tony. So, and then I think when you get to it, because so many of the top guys from each position group didn't actually work, you didn't have those numbers where you like fall off your chair and you're like, oh my goodness, look how great this guy is, look how great that guy was. So in a draft class that's already not top heavy, the guys that are supposed to be the best didn't run. So you're having a bunch of guys that are not going to blow you away from an athletic standpoint.
And again, I think a lot of that had to do with the field, the turf conditions being so slippery. We did see some good times. We didn't see any great knockout times. And the funny thing is, in my opinion, we'll talk about this later on, I thought the offensive line group was the best group of the 4 days of on-the-field workouts. And it's probably no surprise that that field had 3 prior days of being worked in by the other, 200, well, it was 50 offensive linemen, 200, 250 players. And then the offensive linemen were able to do well.
All right, so let's start the defensive linemen, Tony. We'll go the order in which these worked. I'll throw a couple guys out there that I thought did well in terms of on-field drills and in terms of their workouts. Um, Darius Alexander, I thought helped himself. Had a sub 5 second 40, 4.95, 1.72 10-yard split. Pretty good jumps, a 31-inch vert, 9.3 broad. I thought he did pretty well. Derek Harmon, I thought was very mobile. He showed his ability to move in the drills too. And then Ty Robinson, I think you saw the stiffness a little bit with him. He's not very, side to side quick, but he ran a 4.83, over 33 inches on the vert, almost a 10-foot broad. Those are the guys to me, at least in terms of the testing. We'll get to some of the drills in a second that I thought did a really nice job.
Hey, I thought Robinson did very well. I know you're talking about defensive tackles. I thought Josh Farmer had a good workout, but he ran a 5.11, which is usually a pretty good number for a defensive tackle, but compared to some of the faster times, it's not good.
He was good in the drills, though. I thought he was great in Farmer in the field work. He moved very well.
Yeah, he had a 1.77 10-yard split, which I thought was outstanding. C.J. West of Indiana, I mean, 4.95 in the 40, 1.73 10-yard split, 33-inch vertical jump for a 316-pound defensive tackle. I thought, and that's a guy, when you look at him on film, he's more of a gap occupier, hold your ground, let the other guys do the work. And then he comes out at combine, and in testing, he shows some terrific numbers.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought I'm happy you brought Farmer up. Is that I didn't get wowed by his numbers, but I thought overall, he looked good in the field work. T.J. Sanders, I thought showed his movement ability, even though the testing wasn't phenomenal. Alfred Collins is an interesting guy to me, Tony, because when I saw him at the podium, I'm like, whoa, this guy's impressive with what he weighed in at and how he looks. He carries the weight extremely well. He's just a huge guy, but boy, his explosive numbers on his jumps were just not great. And you want an explosive player even at that size at defensive tackle. So I have not done my full work on him yet. I was curious what your thoughts were on Alfred Collins this week.
Well, I mean, overly large defensive tackle coming from Texas who doesn't test that well. People think he's too big and then goes on to have success. The film on Collins I was very impressed with. The size and the athleticism, I was not. But we've seen this before. And unfortunately, people like myself have sometimes read too much into it. And then guys like Alfred Collins have gone on to have success at the next level.
All right, let's switch out kind of the defensive end, edge rusher types here, Tone. James Pierce, I know a lot of people made a big deal because he had the best 40-yard dash. I think we all kind of expected that. He's very light. He's a linear player. He looked pretty good. His explosive numbers on the jumping were meh. They weren't as good as the 40 might have you lead to believe. Shamar Stewart, I thought the interesting thing about him, we all expected him to test really well, and he did. The 1.58 split on the 40 is phenomenal. Only 267 pounds, so he was 14 pounds lighter than what he was at the Senior Bowl, which I thought was interesting.
Interesting note about Shamar Stewart, and I talked to a couple of players. He has this Olympian type workout, but he only has 1.5 sacks. And I asked a couple of people about it, and they said he's a straight line player. They said the reason he only had 1.5 sacks is he can't bend off the edge. He can't change direction. And he missed a lot of sacks. If he had that sort of ability to bend or to change direction, his sack numbers would have been much higher. And he didn't run the 3-cone. He didn't run the 20-yard short shuttle. In my mind, when they're telling me this, I'm thinking Taylor Mays. If you remember Taylor Mays, the safety out of USC, I mean, he was great. He had Olympic-type numbers when he performed in the combine. I believe it was around 2012-ish or so. But he couldn't move 2 inches to his left or right. And somebody made the comparison to Vernon Gholston as far as Shamar Stewart's concerned. He's Vernon Gholston. He looks great in shorts and a T-shirt, but he struggles bending off of the edge, which is why his production was so bad. Yet you saw, an Olympic athlete on the turf at Lucas Oil Stadium.
You mentioned Landon Jackson, his explosive numbers. He jumped over 40 inches. That was very good. And I thought Princely Uman-Mielen actually did a pretty nice job. Now, he's a little light at 244, Tony, so I wonder about that. But 38-inch vertical jump, 10.6 broad, very good explosive numbers there. The 4.72, 1.62 on the 40, okay. But he was explosive, a lot lighter than he's been, which I wonder about. And he's another guy that he might have a little stiffness to his game.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I understand the 4.72 is a good number, but he was a guy who was projected to be a 4.6 guy coming into the combine. And the combine, more than anything else, is about expectations.
Yep.
If you're expected to run a 4.65 and you run a 4.72, people are going to go, and then you watch, like you said, the stiffness. The position drills weren't that great. And the thing with Princely is, he's known as a guy who doesn't consistently play at a high level. If he consistently played at a high level and met expectations, you're talking about a top 45 pick. I was not, some of the numbers look really good, but those were expected. The 40 time, I think people expected a bit of a faster time from him.
Now, Donovan Ezeraku did not do a ton, but he did have a 6.94 3-cone, which, for edge guys trying to bend the edge and stuff like that, that was an impressive number, though he didn't really do much else.
Yeah, a 35.5-inch vertical jump, 4.19 in the short shuttle, 6.94 in the 3-cone. I thought he looked terrific in drills, moved very well, showed a lot of athleticism. Didn't run the 40. There's probably a reason why. He wasn't going to time that fast. He's not known, or he's not. It would go back to expectations. People are looking at him as a 4.75 guy. Probably wants to wait till pro day to maybe get that time down into the 4.6s. But he looked good. The numbers the testing that he did, he had good marks, and I thought he was terrific in position drills.
And then those are the guys mostly, Tony, at the kind of edge defensive line spot that
I'm gonna add one more guy. I thought Tyler Barron of Miami was outstanding. 4.62 in the 40, 10-yard split of 1.62, 35.5-inch vertical jump at 258 pounds, 10-foot-1 broad jump. Really looked good in drills. But Barron is a guy like Umanalele in the sense that when he's on his game and when the motor's running, he's an impactful guy, but the motor isn't always running for him. And teams going to look at those numbers and saying, why weren't you a constant force at Miami? Why weren't you the guy that people were trying to shut down, play in and play out? Because the motor wasn't always running, but he's got the ability.
All right, go to the linebacker, Tony, and look, it's very basic stuff, but Jahad Campbell just is a different sized human being than the other people at that position. Weighed in at 6'2", almost 6'3", 235 pounds, but his frame can carry 250 pounds easy. Like, you just look at how big his frame is. He can carry that weight. I'm sure he came in light to run really fast, and he did. 4.52, 1.53 on the 10-yard split, which is an excellent time. Jumped 10.7 in the broad. Yep. So just really impressive athlete, Jahad Campbell.
And transition those athletic skills into drills, because he looked very athletic during drills, moving sideline to sideline. He was one of the few top guys that basically did most of everything. He didn't do everything, but he did most of everything. And after that outstanding 40 time, took part in the position drills and looked really, really good.
Yeah, and then I thought Demetrius Knight helped himself, Tony. He ended up running a 4.58, which I think was better than expectations, to your point earlier. 1.58, 10-yard split. His jumps were okay. And he also weighed in at only 235. So, but he was a player that on tape looks really good, and I think he showed enough athleticism here so he can, maintain that spot or maybe push up a little bit in those linebacker rankings. I'm
going to add Jeffrey Bassa of Oregon to that. 4.63 in the 40, 1.59 10-yard split, 38.5 vertical jump, 9.10 broad, 7.34 3-cone. Not the greatest time, but not an awful time. Explosive guy, and he's got the mentality, because if you watch Oregon football, this guy is goes sideline to sideline making plays.
I'll just mention Carson Schlesinger, Tony. He weighed in at 242, which is a good number for him. Only jumped. So, right. And it was a really good one. 39.5-inch vertical leap. Very good. Didn't do anything else. I'm sure we'll see him do more at his pro day.
Well, I'll tell you, I was talking with somebody about him, and, they said, do you think first round? And I said, I think the only off-ball linebacker that goes in the first round is Jahad Campbell. And they said, well, Schlesinger's going to beat all of Campbell's numbers when he participates in pro day. And there's a lot of love out there for Schlesinger. So I still think Campbell is the only off-ball linebacker, but we're going to have to keep an eye on Schlesinger during his pro day workout, because from what I'm told, there's going to be some outstanding marks.
Excellent hair, by the way, too. Very like he could not fit the like West Coast football player profile anymore than what he does. All right, let's go to defensive backs here, Tony. And this is a group that talking to people out there, there isn't a ton of love for this group of
Yep.
defensive backs. It just isn't a great class. But I thought you saw some guys do really, really well. And I thought Max Hairston was the first guy. We talked to him a lot at the Senior Bowl, did a good job down there. 5'11, 183, 4'2", 40, 10'9" on the broad, 39 on the vertical, 76-inch wingspan, which is also a very good number for him. He stole the show at the cornerback position.
He did, and he's a feisty guy. I mean, he's got to polish his ball skills, but as we saw at the Senior Bowl, as you watched during the season, he's not an opportunistic cornerback. He's athletic, he's fluid, he did well in drills, and while I think there's room for improvement in his game, he doesn't back down to a challenge. I mean, he plays big football. Some people think that workout could push him into the back end of round one. I would be surprised. But as you said, I mean, this cornerback class overall, there's concerns about Will Johnson. There's concerns about a lot of different players. I really didn't hear Shannon Ravel's name talked about too much when I was talking to people during the day or in the evening. The Notre Dame cornerback, few people think he's going to end up in round one. So maybe there is a chance for Hairston to end up in the back end of that frame.
Yeah, and all those guys you mentioned, Travis Hunter, Morrison, Ravel, Johnson, none of them did anything. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with injury, but again, just going back to my point that not as many guys as you would have liked did in fact.
But even the chatter, when they talk about injury, there was not much talk. Those guys' names didn't pop up in conversation at all.
Yeah, exactly. All right, a couple other guys. Jahdae Barron, he jumped vertically, 35-inch, and ran the 40. 439, I think, was the final number right off the top of my head. So I think that's a guy, Tony, that in another draft class, a guy that maybe some people don't think can play outside, though he played outside pretty well last year. I'm curious how high he's going to end up going here, given this class, to your point. Can Barron work himself in even to like the top 25, 20, depending on how this draft goes?
That would be a surprise to me. I think, in my opinion, best is the bottom half of round one. But again, teams draft players who can play outside or perceived nickelbacks at the end of round one all the time now, because, nickelback is a starting position in a lot of defensive schemes. So it wouldn't surprise me. I thought Robert Longerbeam of Rutgers had a terrific workout, both testing wise as well as position drills.
He's just a little light, right? He's just a little light.
That's it, right? He's tall, yeah. Right? Exactly. He's tall, but he is thin. 4.39 40, 1.5 10-yard split, 11.2 in the vertical jump. Looks really good in position drills. But like you say, that light frame probably going to dismiss him from any sort of press coverage. But he's a smart guy. He's a guy who's opportunistic, and I think probably going to be a day 3 pick. We talk about nickelbacks. You also need dimebacks. I think Longerbeam fits that bill.
Yeah, a couple more corners I want to touch on, Tony. These guys, I think they'll play inside at the next level. Jacob Parrish, I thought, had a really nice day. Now, he's only 5'9", just under 5'10", 191 pounds, but a 4.35 40, 10.9 broad, 37-inch vert. I thought looked really smooth in the drills too. Really, really fluid hips, could flip them. And then Caleb Ransaw, the other guy, 4.33 40, 10.9 broad, 40-inch vertical jump. Those are two guys that I think are going to be day 2 picks. They might be limited in terms of what role you can use them in, but they perform really well athletically.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially with Ransaw. I mean, he tested off the charts. He was highly rated by scouts. Ransaw is a bit like, Shamar Stewart. The production's not there, but the athleticism is, and the underlying ability is to play at the next level. So you just got to get that package together, put him in a spot to make him productive, and he will be a developmental prospect. He could go day 2. I think he's more of a day 3 football player, a day 2 athlete, because he doesn't make a lot of plays on the ball. But he proved his worth at the combine. I also think that a couple other guys I will tell you, Azari Thomas of Florida State tend to A broad jump, not a big deal. But I thought during position drills, he looked really good. I questioned his ball skills throughout the season. I thought he improved during the Senior Bowl. I thought his work during position drills was outstanding. I also like Quincy Riley of Louisville, who coming into the combine, I didn't have a huge opinion of him. 4.9 in the 41.5-inch vertical jump, also look good in position drills. And when I say look good in position drills, what does that mean? It means a quick fluid back pedal rather than a stiff mechanical back pedal. It means the ability to flip your hips and really lose nothing transitioning from moving in reverse to moving forward. The ability to track the pass in the air, especially in that dome where the lights are on. Sometimes it's tough to lose the ball. It's easy. I should say it's easy to lose the ball in the air. I thought Riley did a good job of that.
100%. I want to throw a couple of guys out there, Tony. Darian Porter tested really well. A guy his size, 6'3", 195, 80-inch wingspan. They're on a 6.713 cone. That's a really good time. 10.11 broad, 4.04 shuttle. I thought in the drills, though, like that transition, flipping those hips, it didn't translate, right? That type of 3-cone, you should look a lot smoother in those drills.
I did a daily risers piece after each workout at Sportskeeda. And what happens is the way I do it is, I'll watch the guys who test incredibly well or test much better than I expect. And then I watch them through the drills. And Porter was among a couple of players that after his testing, when I saw the testing numbers, was on my list to watch as a guy who I thought impressed or helped himself or whatever you want to call it. But then I watched the drills and I was like, I don't know about that. Same thing with Zaw Frazier. I mean, Zaw Frazier started off well, and then the testing, he had his moments, but it wasn't, say, like Maxwell Hashton or Jade Barrett, or even the drills were not as good as Thomas of Florida State, who I thought did a terrific job.
Final guy I'll mention, just because I think of expectations, Tony, Trey Amos is a guy that some guys like at the end of round 1, top of round 2. 6 foot, 195 pounds, almost a 78-inch wingspan, 77 3/4 inches, which is really nice. 31-inch arms. It's a good size for a corner. He was in the high 4.4s, but I think given where people thought he might be, I thought he did do well to kind of keep him into the mix as a top 5, top 6 type of corner.
Yeah, I mean, the tape is different from the athleticism. They had him at a 1.6 unofficial 10-yard split. The vertical jump was 32.5. The broad was 10.6. You got to wonder what's up with that vertical jump. Watch it during pro day. But the tape is real good on Amos. I was not as high on others as Amos. I watched the film. I really liked him. But again, 4.43 for a guy that size, 6'1" and change is a good time. It's just not a super fast time that we're seeing from some of the guys these days, some of the players these days.
All right, let's go to safety, Tony. Nick Emanwari obviously just stole the show. He's gigantic. 10.6 broad, 43-inch vertical, 4.33 40-yard dash at almost 230 pounds. The guy's a monster. He's big. He's athletic. And he's a guy that is going to be a first-round pick.
I mean, the film bears it out. You talked about Shamar Stewart and the lack of production, and you watch the film on Emanwari, who did not participate in position drills, and the guy's an explosive safety. I mean, he's not just fast in a straight line; he shows great speed laterally. I think the question with him is he going to be a first rounder as a safety, as a free safety, as a linebacker, as a hybrid player? The thing about him is, unlike the Shamar Stewarts, he's good side to side, moving laterally, as he is in a straight line. And I agree with you. He's definitely affirmed himself as a first-round pick. Could go higher than Malachi Starks at this point in time.
What do you think of Starks' day?
Okay. Disappointed in him. I mean, I was someone who had high expectations. The time of 4.5 or whatever the official time was doesn't really bother me because he plays a little bit faster than that. I thought he was up and down during drills, not very smooth. I talk about that transition to flip his hips. He was okay. A guy like that, for a safety to go in the first round, unless you're a guy like Emanwari, you got to be able to show you can play over the slot receiver, which Starks does on film. But then you watch the drills and you see he's got work to do. I'd say overall I was slightly disappointed.
All right, one other safety I'll mention, Tony, because I liked him at the Senior Bowl. I haven't done my film work on him yet. Billy Bowman,
Yeah.
I thought tested really well. Now he's got really tiny arms, just 28
Uh,
and a half inch arms, which is not big. That's going to be a red flag for some teams. But he's an instinctual player. He make plays on the ball, and he's not the biggest guy. He's a little bit shorter, but man, he moves really well out there on the field. I was impressed by him.
and you can get away. I mean, teams have no problems with shorter safeties these days if they can go sideline to sideline and track the pass in the air. And I agree with you. I mean, he after Amenawari, he was my number two safety as far as my risers. Moved very well, showed the ability to flip his hips, was very quick. Another safety who I thought did very, very well was R.J. Mickens out of Clemson, 4.49 the 40, 41 and a half vertical jump, 10'1" broad. Position drills, he showed good footwork, he was fluid, he was balanced. That's the other thing you want to see with these guys. When they're moving around the field, when they're flipping their hips, are they on their feet? Is it natural, or do they have to gather themselves and get back into form? I thought Mickens did a real good job showing a lot of balance.
Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risks into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, let's jump over to the offensive side of the ball. I know a lot of people like to make a big deal about the quarterbacks at the NFL Combine. Like whatever.
Yeah.
You're throwing on air. I thought Quinn Ewers and Jackson Dart were both fine. Didn't show off cannons, but they were accurate. They got the ball where they need to go. They showed enough arm strength. And I think the news kind of out of there, and we talked about Ward and Sanders off the top. They didn't do much. People were very impressed by Tyler Shuck and how he presented himself, how he met, his arm strength, stuff like that. And that he seems to be talking to people, no one here at the Giants, but just in general at the Combine, the belle of the ball for a lot of people coming out of Indy.
Oh, he should be. I mean, he's almost collecting Social Security. I mean, so he's got much more experience than many of these guys. I thought his passing workout was okay, and I watched him. A lot of the passes were off. As far as I was concerned, Ewers had the best overall workout. He showed a solid deep arm. I thought he drove his passes downfield. I thought he did a good job. Brady Cook from Missouri really surprised me, especially with his deep passes. Was right on the money with a lot of them. I think with Brady Cook, I got more than I expected. I thought that Kyle McCord was actually the best deep ball thrower. His short and intermediate stuff was late, at times was inaccurate. But when they throw the deep outs and the long passes down the field, wow. I mean, McCord threw a really pretty ball, and I was really impressed with his deep throws, with the accuracy, with the speed, with the ability to drive the ball downfield.
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought one thing I'll note, and look, we threw a lot of praise his way at the Senior Bowl when we thought he did a nice job. I think you saw the Dylan Gabriel arm strength issues coming up on a lot of those deep outs and stuff like that, and he had to throw the ball a little bit too early on some of the deep routes. That was one thing that I noted on some of those deep outs where he had trouble getting the ball out there accurately.
Ditto for Seth Hennigan. I mean, Seth Hennigan, he's like an Einstein of quarterbacks. He's super smart, does a great job leading the offense. But as he showed on Saturday, he's a good backup in a timing offense because he cannot get the ball downfield.
Anything else jump out at you about the quarterback position? How about your boy Milroe?
Disappointed. I mean, he was all over the place. It was, and I take it personally because you know how high I was on Milroe, but I can't see anybody taking him in the first round as much as I was hoping for it.
We have one fan on Twitter that has been tracking your love for Jalen Milroe throughout this process, and I think it was either last week or 2 weeks ago. Like, oh, totally, finally took him out of the first round. It's about time.
Oh well, you got to man up and admit it. And I mean, I guess Milroe is going to be one of those misses. I still think he's definitely got great potential, and you got to give him credit for competing because he went to the Senior Bowl, he went to the Combine. He is a high character guy. Somebody's going to fall in love with him. He just needs a really good quarterback coach. Probably should have tried to stay at Alabama one more year with Michael Penix's, the former Washington quarterback coach, now moving over to Alabama.
Yeah, I still think he's going to be a day two pick. Some team will roll on the traits, and he'll end up going to somebody on day two, maybe even a round two. Who knows? We'll see. All right, let's jump to tight ends, Tony, since they worked out before the running backs and the receivers. We'll go there first. So many of the top guys again didn't work. Ty
Yep.
Warren, 256 pounds. You see him at the podium. He looks like Jeremy Shockey, like size, hair. He just like looks like Shockey. I was impressed that Loveland actually weighed in at 248. He's in the sling with the shoulder, and he probably hasn't been able to lift or do anything with that shoulder. So the fact that he was still 248, even after probably not being able to lift for a couple of months, I was pretty impressed by at least how much he weighed in at.
And Loveland may not work out before the combine because of that shoulder. That was the word that was the word in Indianapolis. Warren didn't run for a
Dude, by the way,
reason.
someone said with Loveland, he might not be able to take contact till like August.
Yeah,
I heard a couple people report that.
I was told it's an AC joint. We'll see how it affects his draft stock. But if somebody told me, the later in the first round you go, the better the team you end up with. And I had him going to the LA Chargers in one of my early mocks to be reunited with his old head coach, and that team needs a tight end. So there may be a silver lining to that. It wouldn't surprise me from what I was hearing in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I agree. My guy Terrence Ferguson, Tony.
Yeah.
I liked him come out of the Senior Bowl. I liked his tape and 605, 247, ran a 463, 155, 10-yard split. Pretty good jumps. To me, he was one of the most impressive tight ends there.
Pretty good jumps. 39-inch vert is outstanding. I mean,
oh, was it 39? I had 34 ran that. I must have transcribed it wrong.
Okay. That's what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I want to see him transition that athleticism onto the field because we don't see that speed. We don't see that athleticism. I've been on him as a day 3 pick, a guy who's your traditional number 2 tight end. He's shown he's got the numbers to be a potential number 1, and I think he absolutely helped himself or his combine workout helped his draft stock.
Anybody else at tight end that jumped out at you?
No, Harold Fannin did not jump out at me.
He was
4.7.
fine. Like he was about what I expected him to be. You know what I mean?
But my point is, some people are talking about him as an early pick, a day 2 pick. I've always thought he's a fringe, late day 2, more of a day 3 type guy. Good football player, not a great athlete. Someone where benefited from the fact that the offense was focused around him and took advantage of it. Good for him. Did have a decent 3-cone, 6.97 in a 3-cone. That's a nice mark. But again, I mean, a move tight end that's got to learn to block, that doesn't have great athleticism.
Tight end has become such a size, weight, speed, height type of position, Tony, and none of these guys jumped out. Like, you're right. Like, Fannin, like, I still think he'll probably sneak into the back end of the 3rd round if I had to bet, just because it's not a great class in overall. But look, I'm with you. And then I think the other story we should talk about is Gunnar Helm tested terribly. And then I don't know if you saw the Ian Rappaport tweet where he sent out the picture of his ankle, which looked like mine when I twisted my ankle playing basketball like 4 years ago. I was in a boot for 2 weeks, and this guy tried to run a 40 and do all that stuff on a bad ankle. So you could take those Gunnar Helm testing numbers and throw them into the trash because they really don't mean anything. And that's surprising because on tape he looks like a good athlete. I was shocked when his numbers are what they were.
Yeah, I thought he was a Terrence Ferguson type and, a very good college tight end that's going to be a number 2 or the number 3. Jake Bringingstool of Clemson, major disappointment. I mean, here's a guy that a lot of people thought coming into the season was a potential day 2 pick, could potentially be the first tight end selected, 4.75 in the 40. 31-inch vertical jump, 9.7. I had heard all season long his draft stock was dropping. This is just, another arrow or another sling, another knife in his draft stock. 31.5-inch arms, 8 and 5-inch hands. That's going to kill his draft stock.
All right, you ready to go to wide receiver, Tone?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Matthew Golden. I have not done all my film work on him yet. I'm looking forward to doing it. A lot of people, and based on a couple of the reports that I saw, even the people from Texas were fall off their chair, blown away that he ran a 4.29 40-yard dash.
And I'm told that was on a bad ankle. I'm told that he, like Gunnar Helm, was dealing with an ankle issue. 4.29 with a 1.49-10 split, which was terrific. And then he stopped. People say, well, yeah, you're going to stop with 4.29, but he didn't do anything else. The position drills or nothing. And I was told it was because of the ankle. And, I think he's a nice receiver. I don't think he's a great receiver. I thought coming in to the combine, because I did my Texas film work, he was head and shoulders above Isaiah Bond, who shot his mouth off before the combine and just did not deliver and drops a lot of passes as he did during position drills. But Matthew Golden helped himself. We'll see if he can finish, if he can complete the circle at Pro Day.
A couple other guys I thought Tony did really nice. Jane Higgins, 6'4", 214 pounds, ran a 4.47, 1.53 split, jumped almost 40 inches, 39, 10.8 broad. Really nice testing numbers. That guy's going to be a second-round pick. With those size, weight, height, speed in his tape, he's going to be a second-round pick for some team.
He was one of those guys that when I saw the test numbers, watch him, the position drills really didn't impress me as much. He showed some stiffness. The guy that blew me away that I was really impressed with during the entire workout was Dante Thornton of Tennessee. 4.3 seconds in the 40 with a 1.51 10-yard split, 6'5", caught the ball incredibly well, looked fluid and natural, with the short and deep throws. Great adjustment to the errant pass. He was in that second group of quarterbacks with Jalen Milroe. I thought Thornton, who really didn't get much chatter before the season, who had a terrific season, looked outstanding during the combine, his combine workout on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going back and watching his tape. One of the bigger guys that I thought Tony helped himself, the fact that Stanford wide receiver Alec Eilmaner, 6'01", almost 6'2", and he ran a 4.44 with a 38.5-inch vert, 10.7 broad. Those are very good athletic numbers for a guy. When you watch him on tape, that's not that type of athleticism doesn't necessarily pop when you watch him.
Yeah, he looked like a straight line type guy, and he needs to improve his routes, but I would agree with you. And he caught the ball very well. He did very well during the position drills. And you want to talk about a bigger tight end who impressed. I really liked Isaac Tesler, who basically half of his neighborhood was on hand. If you watch the workout, they were sitting behind me in the fan section.
You were sitting with them?
Well, I was not sitting with them. I was in our section where we were allowed to sit. They were so nice to us. Was basically right off the field, the fan section, and it was packed on Saturday. Tesla's family and neighborhood were right behind me, but he was terrific, and they had reason to cheer. 4.43 in the 40, 1.51 10-yard split, 39.5-inch vert, 10.9 broad jump, 6.85 3-cone. Even though he didn't show great route running skills in position drills, caught the ball incredibly well, made an athletic over-the-shoulder reception late in the day, which was eye-popping. Absolutely helped himself for a guy that's 6'4", 214 pounds.
So you're telling me, Tony, Isaac Tesla had an electric performance? Is that what you're telling me?
Okay, there you go.
I was working on that all week.
We could doze a few things in his performances, like the route running, but he showed a good 3-cone, so that the ability's there, potential's there.
Very good. 3 slot guys, Tony, I want to point out that I thought did a nice job. Jalen Lane, just under 5'10", 191 pounds, ran a 4.34, 1.50. Split, 40-inch vert, 11-inch broad. He did a nice job at the Senior Bowl as well. Jalen Knoll, the teammate of Jaden Higgins, 5'10", 194, 4.39, 40, 1.51 split, jumped really well. 6.75 3-cone, which is a really nice number. He did well, and then I'll throw Kyle Williams out there as well. 5'10", 190, 4.4, 1.55 split. He jumped well. So those are 3 slot guys, Tony, that I thought did a really nice job showing off their speed.
I thought Dominic Lovett did very well. I know the testing numbers weren't great. 4.4 in the 40, but he was projected to be a 4.55 guy, 4.58 guy. So he was a lot faster than people thought. Just ran super quick routes, sharp route running. Quickly got into breaks, got out of them, ready to catch the ball on balance. I thought he did a terrific job. And I know his 40 time was horrendous, but I thought Tez Johnson rebounded well. He had some other good marks. 40 time was 4.51. His 3-cone time was 6.65, 37-inch vertical jump. but he's much faster. He's more quick than fast, as people say. And he showed that quickness. You talk about slot guys and the ability to separate during position drills. People are going to talk about the 4-5-1. I say watch the position drills because he showed the ability. He's going to be one of those guys that it's going to be tough to cover him. Granted, he's under 160 pounds because he's so quick running routes.
Yeah, he also had a 1-5-3 10-yard split, so he got out early, and that shows his explosiveness and quickness, right? So he'll get on you quick. He just seems to be missing that top end, sprinter speed in that final 20 yards. One time I was disappointed by Tony, but I think he's a really good player. Ricky White at a UNLV just ran a 4.61. I was hoping he would get into the mid 4.5s. He did have a 1.55 10-yard split, which is not a bad time. But I wish he would have done a little bit better. And then Jack Besh, I thought, was pretty good in the field workouts, catching the ball, though he didn't do any testing.
Yeah, and Josh Kelly of Texas Tech, I mean, John, you could probably be him in the 44.7. But when you watch him on film, he's a real good receiver. He plays fast. He was the go-to guy, first at Washington State, then Texas Tech. So, in the very late rounds, you're going to have to roll the dice on Josh Kelly, who's a good football player, but not a great athlete.
Tony, there be somebody really scary chasing me to get the 4.7, and maybe that 20 years ago, maybe, but no, not happening. You were the decathlete. What was your best 40 time, Tony? Did you ever run it?
No. It was 100. It was 100 meters. it was
what was
100 meters
meter time
out of in the mid 11s, 11.5ish, and that was out of a starting block, not with two hands coming out, not one hand.
See, we're getting into technicals here. I like it. All right, I'm happy. Well, do you want to do O-line next or running backs next, Tony?
No, let's go with running backs because they were on Saturday.
Yeah, and I thought they were phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree.
This was probably solidified to me, Tony. This is probably the best group that in the draft, except for maybe the defensive line. And boy, I have 5 guys, but we could talk about 12 of them if we wanted to. Let's start with Omarion Hampton because I think he's probably going to be the second running back picked after Ashton Genty, who did not test out there. Came in at basically 6 foot, 221 pounds, ran a 4.46, 1.54, jumped out of the building, 38-inch vert, 10.10 broad, a 4.4 shuttle. Checked every box you would want, and there's a real good chance he gets into the back end of the first round.
Couple things. I reported on Saturday that there are some teams that have Omarion Hampton as the number 1 back in the draft. Now, there were some teams that had Zach Wilson rated ahead of Trevor Lawrence. I mentioned that, and I still think Genty is the number 1 back, but that's an opinion to keep out there. Want to see, he didn't run the 3-cone time. The 4.4 20-yard shuttle is but that's indicative of him because he's great in a straight line. He's fast. He's explosive. He's powerful. But that side-to-side lateral, he's not a perimeter ball carrier. I think, as we saw with the 20-yard shuttle, didn't run the 3-cone. He is what he is. I mean, he is a talented, athletic, between the tackles ball carrier who also catches the ball well. If you're looking for that type of back, late in the first round, early in the second round, you're going to look at Omarion Hampton.
I was really impressed by Quinshon Judkins' workout, Tony. Came in at 5'11", 220. I didn't think he was going to break a 4.5. I really didn't. He came in at 4.48, 1.51 10-yard split, 38-inch vert, 11-foot broad. He was a much better athlete than I thought he was going to be after watching him on tape, man. I think I would pick him over Travion Henderson myself. I know you're a big Henderson guy, so we can have that debate for the next month and a half, which is great. But I thought Quinshon Judkins had a really nice day.
Didn't really transition that athleticism into position drills. Showed a little bit of stiffness, was not as good moving sideline to sideline as some of them. I agree with you. I think Quinshon Judkins is going to come off the board before Travion Henderson. I think he's probably a guy who's going to go middle of round 2. I mean, if the Dallas Cowboys don't take a running back in the first round, they want a receiver, I could absolutely see them taking Judkins in round 2. I just think that Travion Henderson is probably going to be a more productive pro because he does so many things better because he's a little bit faster. You saw him; he was faster than Judkins in the 40. But yeah, he was terrific. I thought that Byshawn Tootin, obviously with that 4.32 40, and he plays that speed 1.49 with his 10 split. 40.5 inch vertical jump, 10-10 broad jump. And that was on an ankle that's about 95%. He struggled all last year with an ankle injury. The ankle was about 90% at the Senior Bowl, and the ankle still isn't fully healthy. So it'll be interesting to see what he does at Pro Day. But I thought he caught the ball extremely well in position drills, made some nice deep receptions. And I think now Tootin's a guy like Junkins helped himself. I think Tootin's a guy in a stacked running back class could get consideration late in day two, but there's so many running backs. Someone's going to have to fall out.
Yeah, I thought he was really impressive too, Tony. I'm with you. My guy RJ Harvey, I thought had a good day. 5'8", 205, 4'4", 40, 157 split, jumped really well, 4.34 shuttle. I thought he looked good. And again, any other running backs jumped out? There's one guy I want to bring up that I have a couple questions about, Tony, but anyone else that really pumped for you that you were very impressed by based on your expectations heading in?
I thought Trevor Etienne did a solid job. I thought he was, the testing marks were decent. 4.42 in the 40 with a 1.51, 10-yard split.
Quick in the drills, though, man. He was bouncing.
Yeah, 35.5-inch vert, 10.4 in the broad. Outstanding in the drills. I mean, just great footwork, great balance. Pass catching ability was top notch. I thought he did really well. I thought Dylan Sampson was another guy in the drills who did well. Didn't run the 40, 35-inch vert, 10.4 broad jump, super quick foot. I mean, this was a guy who looks, when you watch the film, he looks basically straight line-ish. But, during the position drills, showed excellent footwork, getting over the bags, a lot of terrific pass catching ability, which he really never did at Tennessee. So I thought Sampson during the drills specifically really stood out for me.
And then I'll just throw Caleb Johnson out there, Tony. Yeah. Little disappointed, 6'1",
highly
224 pounds.
Yeah.
People told me he was going to run in the 4.4s. He runs in the 4.57, 1.62, 10-yard split. Looked like a lot of build-up speed, just did not look very explosive.
I completely agree with you. And I mean, Johnson's a guy who on film I absolutely loved. I thought that, he had a chance to basically battle Omarion Hampton for that second running back spot. Boy, was I wrong, because, I mean, it was not good. And when you watch him on film, he's a guy that's got to burst through the hole, can beat defenders into the open field, and then run to daylight. Good short area quickness, too, with the ability to make defenders miss. And you go back, you're like, it's a prototypical running back that comes out of Iowa that's great on Saturday, but may not have the skills to play on Sunday. Granted, we have to wait and see. That dialogue has to be played out completely, but fully. But I agree with you. I mean, just very disappointing to me.
I don't think we mentioned it during the wide receivers. Ted McMillan did not do anything. He did.
But didn't he have a great psychological test? Somebody told me one of the AQ tests or something was just off the charts with him.
Yeah, I heard that too. He also measured it at 6'4", 219 pounds, and he's a big kid. And Travis Hunter, obviously a cornerback. We didn't mention that, and wide receiver. He was listed as a DB. He said he didn't request that. That's just what NFL teams wanted him to be at. But I think his measurements were good, Tony. 6 foot, 188 pounds. There was some worries he might be like 5'10", 175, and he weighed in very well.
But now let's see what it is at Pro Day. How heavy is he at Pro Day? What does he run at Pro Day if, in fact, he runs?
And maybe he's not going to measure again at Pro Day, too. Maybe he'll just run. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. All right, offensive line, Tony. Let's start with the measurements, because there was one, big spotlight, and we had talked a lot about this heading in. I had talked to people about this during the week, and everyone swore to me Will Campbell was going to come in with 33-inch arms.
Yep.
He did not.
Nope.
32 and 5/8,
yep.
Which is... That's a tough number to play offensive tackle in the National Football League. What are you hearing from teams based off that measurement?
Really, next to nothing, because they nothing as of yet, because of the fact that they measure right before they work out. So they measured Sunday morning. They worked out Sunday, through the early afternoon. Then everybody left. So there wasn't much time to talk to anybody yet about Will Campbell.
You could have found him at the airport, Tony. What were you doing waiting for the plane to leave? Come on, man.
There you go. I was actually rushing to get my flight back because I wanted to get the heck home. But you're right. I mean, it could be a situation with Will Campbell where this is not going to help him, where a team, maybe the Chicago Bears, takes him and puts him at left tackle until, he proves that he, can't play the position. and maybe they kick him inside. But it's gonna be a large discussion, a hotly debated discussion in war rooms. There will be some teams that have these measurables, and if you don't make the measurables, you're not, you're off the board at that position. So there will be some teams at 32 and 5/8 inch arms that move him to guard. And I had not heard. We had guests on this program who talked about it. I said, I'll believe it when I see it. That said,
He
I
ran
thought
well. He was a
he
sub
had a
540.
terrific day. Yeah, I mean, his testing numbers were good. 32-inch vert, 176 10-yard split, 9.5 broad. The position drills were terrific. If you watch the workout, he went down early. He slid down, and it looked like he may have hurt his knee the way he went down. But he got back up, and he finished the entire workout, and he did relatively well. So, I mean, the athleticism is there. Are teams going to penalize him because his arms are a half inch shorter than what they desire at tackle? Some teams will.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it doesn't show up on tape either. It's not like guys are long arming him all day. So that's a decision teams are going to have to make. All right, who else on the offensive line group, Tony, really impressed you?
I thought Armand Membo was outstanding. I mean, 491 in the 40 at 332 pounds, 34-inch vertical jump, 9'7" in the broad jump.
How about his arms coming in a good half-inch shorter than they did at the Senior Bowl? I was surprised by that.
Displayed great feet and movement skills. When they do that long pulling drill, the deep pulling drill where they turn to the right or turn to the left and get out front. I mean, the guy looked literally like a 300-pound sprinter. That's how fluid and smooth he was.
I agree.
I thought that, we knew he was a first-round pick coming into the combine. I think he's probably moved himself into the middle part of round one.
Who else jumped out at you, Tony, at the tackle position specifically, or is that where the line gets drawn for you?
Well, I thought that Jalen Travis, the big guy, the big tackle from Iowa State, 5'14" in the 40. Okay, that's not great, but still, for a guy that size, 35 inches in the vertical jump, 9'4" in the broad jump at 339 pounds. Moved around relatively well, is going to be a right tackle in the NFL, but a very athletic and strong, and he's a nasty guy. He looks to finish blocks. I think Josh Connolly, I think maybe now he was on my guard board. Maybe I can move him over to tackle. 5'05" in the 40 with a 171 10-yard split, 34.5-inch vert. Displayed terrific footwork during position drills, easily moved around the field. 6'4", we talk about Will Campbell with the 32 and 5/8 arms. Are teams comfortable with a tackle that's 6'4"? He's shown the ability to do it. I may be wrong on this one. Showed a lot of athleticism on Sunday.
Joe DeSavinea had a really nice day, and not surprising, he looked like a really good athlete at the Senior Bowl too. He just needs to work on the technique to utilize that athleticism as a blocker. 6'4", 324, just under 34-inch arms, 4'8'5", 172, 4'9'5", 172 in the 40. His vert and broad jumps weren't great, under 30 inches on the vert, under 9 feet on the broad, but he moved well, and I think kind of as a moving, pulling guard, he could certainly make it in the NFL.
Yeah, or maybe even a tackle. I mean, for a guy that's that big, I thought those numbers were pretty darn good.
Yep.
I did watch the fundamentals. Every time he took a good repetition, his knees were bent. Excellent pad level. Kept that pad level throughout the position drills. I thought Tyler Booker. I think he's the guy that when you look at his numbers, you're 5'3" in the 40, 27-inch in the vertical, 7'10" in the broad. But then you watch the position drills, and wow, quick feet, always on balance, bending his knees, showed violent hand punch, basically knocked the Cincinnati Bengal coach who was holding the blocking bag back off of his feet. And I think that Tyler Booker, you're not going to be impressed with the testing numbers, but if you watch the film and then the position drills, I mean, it was next level.
And one guy I didn't mention, Tony, because he didn't work out, so we didn't get any times on him except for the 40-yard dash. Actually, no, I don't even think he even did the 40. I thought Tyleik Williams, from Ohio State, looked really good in the position drills on the defensive line. even though he didn't test. Just the name I wanted to throw out there as I looking at my notes and realized I forgot to bring him up when we did defensive line.
Yeah, a lot, except for the running backs, a lot of the Ohio State guys, and we knew that going in, didn't run. Staying with the offensive line, I thought Josh Gray of Oregon State did well, 5.03 in the 40 with a 10-yard split of 1.73. Looked good in drills. And this is a guy that's played tackle, guard, and if you remember at the Shrine Bowl, he was taking snaps. Obviously, Jared Wilson of Georgia, who a lot of people believe will be the first center off the board. I'm not a huge fan of him on film. 4.84 in the 40 with a 10-yard split of 1.72, 32-inch arms. I'm sorry, 32-inch vertical jump. And looked very mobile, looked athletic during drills. His tape just doesn't really, do it for me. Maybe I'll have to go back and look at that. Gray Zabel of North Dakota State, 30, didn't run. He's going to run during pro day, 36.5 inches in the vertical jump, 9.3 in the broad. Good change of direction, has a thick build, and as I reported at the from the combine, there's a lot of people that believe that Zabel could slide into the late part of round one. So that's something to keep an eye on.
All right, Tony, final thoughts before we say goodbye here. Now we are around 7 weeks away or 8 weeks away from the NFL draft.
Pro day start. We're taping this on March 3rd. I believe Indiana's pro day is tomorrow. So it's just like never ending. I mean, combine was a little bit more laborious, if you will, than it has been years past. I hope that the NFL can tighten that up. Granted, I know they want to make it a show for the fans, but it's supposed to be first and foremost a scouting event and a massive job interview for these guys who want to play Sunday football. I really hope that they would recognize it and basically run every workout the way Sunday's workout was run by the offensive linemen, because it was crisp, it was compact, it was to the point, and we got a lot out of that Sunday workout. The other days were a little bit helter-skelter.
Tony, good stuff. We'll be back with you next week for another draft season brought to you by Moody's. We'll try to figure out what we're doing next week because it's free agency week, so a lot of people in the NFL will be focused on that. So we'll do something kind of heavy on the draft. Well, maybe we'll do something like sleepers at positions, risers, something like that. Something that kind of gets into the meat of this draft class in terms of guys you keep an eye on moving forward. Tony, we'll talk to you next week. Anything on Sportskeeda coming up this week that fans should keep an eye on?
A lot of insider news and notes from the combine. Still, a lot of good stuff from the past. We'll have some throughout the week. And by the end of the week, we'll have an updated mock draft. So keep an eye out for that.
Check it out, and we'll see you on draft season next week.